welcome to all my fellow panelists, Martin, Amrish, Madhukar, and Ashwin. Ashwin, thank you very much for that opening remarks, which kind of led directly in terms of what exactly we're going to be talking about today. And if you look at the title of our subject, which is reinventing businesses from a digital lens, it's not that we don't have a business. We all have businesses, and all these businesses were in existence even prior to the start of digital, prior to the start of COVID. So, what exactly we're going to be reflecting on today is about the kind of changes that we made in this particular business of ours during the last 18 months. What are some of the changes that we put in place, which we believe are going to be permanent, which will be lasting foundations of the business in the years ahead? And what are some of the changes that we made in order to be able to adapt to a situation which is created because of either lockdown or social distancing or whatever? Uh, when we think about the last 18 months, clearly there are two words which I've often heard. One is digital and the other is technology. And 9 out of 10 people, when I ask them, what exactly do you mean by digital or what exactly do you mean by technology, they all have their own understanding of what exactly digital or technology means. For somebody, it's about communication. If I ask somebody who's in the education business, they say that for us, technology means how do we beam our classes to our students. If you ask somebody who's in the retail business, they say technology for me means actually in terms of ensuring that my customers are able to buy. So when you probe a bit deeper and ask them, what exactly do you mean by customers are able to buy? He says, I have to make sure that my products are visible to my customers. The prices of my products are visible to my customers. I should have a mechanism which allows them to be able to log into my website and to place an order. I should have a mechanism which will allow them to be able to make a payment. And some of them stop at maybe two parts of it. Some people go to 3 and 4 parts. Some people say that I need to go all the way up to AI. So when you come to think about it, what you do realize is that technology and digital are often oft abused words because of the simple reason that they don't have uh, uh, any clear definition. So I decided to look up the dictionary to find out what does digital mean in the dictionary. And digital was a very, very general understanding in the dictionary. It talked about your efforts to digitize your business and your processes. Now, that was even vaguer than the 9 out of the 10 people that I spoke to. And when you talk about technology, then you do realize that digital is also included within technology. If you look at the last 18 months, there have been some who have been quick off the mark. They've said that this is the situation as of today. We have a lockdown. I can't get out of my house. I need to make sure that my business survives. So they were absolutely quick off the mark. Some people said that the government has imposed a lockdown for 3 weeks. So I'll just keep quiet for 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, then I will actually resume my business, only to discover the government extended the initial 3 week lockdown. And what was initially thought as being 3 weeks ended up being almost 3 months. Then they got stuck. And so they were beginning to start worrying about how do I embrace technology. So you have some who actually, like Ambrish, were digital natives. They always were online. And when they were always online, other than the fact that they could not deliver in that initial period, they didn't have to do too much more to their business. But there were many others, and not just amongst the panel, but many of the other retailers who said that, I'm not online. I need to figure out how to be able to embrace some of these technologies to be able to pivot my model to make it online. Some people were a bit slow and then began to adopt some of these digital technologies. And some who said that I don't want to make any change. I think that this is just a passing fad and I can go back to the way I've run my business all these years, without having to make any of these changes. So I think, as Hugo mentioned, we've got with us four of you finest gentlemen who are going to be able to deliberate on some of the points which will hopefully provide some learning and understanding for the audience which is avidly listening to us. So when we talk about, and Amrish, I'd like to pose this question to you. When I called you a digital native, what I actually meant was that you were born digital. And sometimes a lot of people struggle to understand what is born digital mean. And it might sometimes help for all of us to even get onto the same page as you if you were to explain what is born digital mean.
Thanks, Viju. Actually, so let me just start by complicating life a little more. Here's my interpretation of digital. Uh, I think digital and technology is anything that makes the lives of people better, right? And so therefore, when you say that we are born digital, I mean, I think the way we've always approached it was how can we provide more variety? How can we make the shopping experience easier? How can we ensure that shipments happen on time? How can we ensure that costs are lower and we make profits? I mean, so just to confuse the issue completely, that's my interpretation of digital and technology, right? The thing is that we had one layer which we added on top of it, which was that we figured that it's the same customer who could be at on a laptop at some point in time, on a mobile phone at another point in time, or in a mall at a third point in time. And it was our duty to serve him or her whichever way they wanted to get served, right? So I would think of ourselves as digital natives who are also omni-channel in their heads. I mean, and if that further confuses the landscape, so be it, right? So so what happens with us, I guess, is you just get used to the idea of serving customers who are not in front of you. And I think that's the first thing that a digital native does. Very often, we require a sense of engagement with the end consumer being right in front of us. But a digital native gets used to the idea of communicating to somebody who's not in front of them, serving a customer who's not in front of them. Basically, a customer choosing the channel and the mechanism of getting in touch with you, which could has nothing to do with the offline world at all. And I think that's the fundamental core of being a digital native. So even when we were going through, the last couple of years, I know you said that we were digitally native and therefore life didn't change very much for us. Actually, it did, right? Because even though we were used to the idea of not serving customers who were in front of us, we still utilized the time to change a whole bunch of our processes, change everything that we could, which did not require our supply chains to be open at that point in time in order to serve our customers better. So that's how I think about it. Happy to get any clarifications done. Let me know if I've confused the issue completely, but that's how we think about it, Viju.
Thanks. Thank you, Amrish. And Ashwin, this, for you in Reliance, you have exclusive digital businesses and you have an exclusive physical business, which is, let's, for example, assume that Agio is almost exclusively digital, a completely independent online business. Then you've got online businesses like JioMart, which leverage the Reliance network and footprint. Uh, and you also have the physical business. And when you look at all of these businesses separately, and the digital quotient in each of these businesses is also very different. How did you actually transition to that time of March, April, May of 2020 from being at one point of time physical in the office to another point of time, some of your stores allowed to open, some stores not allowed to open, some online businesses allowed to open, some online businesses not allowed to open, and all of you all working from home.
Yeah. So I think it was a very, very quick, turnaround which happened for us. And it was the sheer determination that led to the entire, creation of JioMart. JioMart was launched in the pandemic. And before that, as you rightly said, you've been part of Reliance, about Reliance, that we were largely brick and mortar, and we were in specialty business Ajio as the not in really grocery online. Ajio was our vehicle for the online on the apparel, and very heavy on the brick and mortar situation, because the customer in India really wanted to touch and feel, and there was a digital savviness which was coming. So the brick and mortar really was a great business, and it is still. I mean, as I said, omni-channel cannot be forgotten, and we have to be in everything. But transformation was just the sheer determination that people of India will need groceries, and we being the largest grocers network in the country, we had to continue business. And luckily, it was allowed to operate groceries across the time, but people were not able to come. So we said, how do we home deliver? And we just created this JioMart. And again, it was not possible to really do the entire logistics from large warehouses and distribution centers which were there, because it was required at a very close proximity with the customer in terms of the huge volumes which were required to be delivered home. So we immediately thought in terms of using our store network, and from there we started the hyperlocal. And we realized that this model, it serves both the worlds in a very perfect manner. In terms of whatever is there in the store, you show it to the customer. And we made a very, very flexible architecture of a pin code based store mapping, which within the pin code, the store is serving the customers. They are connecting on the global website and the app, but really the service is done from the local. In terms of your question, how we managed all of us on home and how to do so, the fact of life is that it is not that way. A few people were at home and in our the way we are communicating just now, but there were 150,000 people of ours who were in the field. So our store associates, really, they have been, I mean, the unsung heroes, we say all the time, but in their local ecosystem, they are in their small world, and there are felicitations, and for them that is the world. I mean, their local geography, their community, and all of that. So there's a very big, in retail, the field force and the store associates are the biggest strength actually. So our people really rose to the occasion, and we always say that at a time in the May of 2020, April, May 2020, when there was no idea, nobody, not even China had figured out what is it going on and what is the cure, how it will be really, I mean, if a person gets the COVID, what happens to the person, whether it is this way, that way, nobody had known. But the people in the store were brave, and that service mindset of the people, we discovered that in spite of telling people to be really, I mean, we would operate only with 50% capacity of people, but there were these brave associates who really made us feel that there is a road actually. And that is what they carried on the business with whatever was available. And we saw them like at local level, people were going and taking permissions as was given by the local authorities, what application to be made. So then it gave strength to everybody, and really the whole movement of just the customer service at the back of the mind and trying to do things. And probably I say in almost all the forums that before pandemic, there was, just when it started there and lockdown started, there was a WhatsApp message of Isaac Newton, how he was locked for 2 years inside his home, away from his university, etc. But that was the most productive time he utilized to make all his quantum physics and law of gravity and all of those things. If we see his history, it was just a WhatsApp and the social media message. This happened 377 years ago, they would say. And exactly that happened to us. This has been the most productive time in terms of growth, one must say. The opening of channels, really the new way of serving the customer. So that's how it's just the sheer determination to serve the customer, supported by the field teams and everybody in the organization, from the apex to down. Do whatever is required, but we will serve the customer. That's what I would sum it up to.
Great, thank you. So the very stirring and very inspirational words. Madhukar, coming to you, and I think you were also in the what you might define as the essentials category, being a pharmacy retailer of repute and spread. you had a situation where you are allowed to open, but you had challenges in opening. And that is in the one part in terms of opening a physical store. And the second part of it was in terms of the online business, which actually bolted on to your offline business. So how did you think about both of these and how to interplay between the two of them in the larger scheme of things? And going back to what Ashwin said, also about thinking about your frontline field force as being the heroes of the day.
Yeah, Biju, you're right. Just like the grocery business, arts was also an essential thing. So from day one, there was never any doubt that we'd be able to open. The thing was, how would we open? In the initial first week, we saw nearly 50% of the people actually leaving for their villages, most of our employees. Luckily for us, the stores were not allowed to be open throughout the day. If we had normal working hours, I don't think we would have been able to open the stores at all. Since the government basically asked us to, reduce the number of hours, we were able to somehow manage. But it was a challenging time, I would say. For us, customer walking to the store, fortunately, was not a big problem because they were still coming, they were still buying medicines and all. And just keeping the stores itself was a challenge initially. And then we were also online for a while. Since 2015, we have been online. We have been running this omnichannel business out there where customers could come and, place an order and we would deliver it to their homes, or they could place an order on our website and then come and pick it up from one of our stores. Click and pick and delivery home was available for a long time. But then we had the same problem. In fact, just before COVID, we were just moving to a 2-hour delivery service. And immediately after COVID, although there was a great demand, we had to actually step back completely because we just didn't have the people to go and deliver at homes. So we actually cut back our services and we started telling customers that we would deliver only to the gate. And so we devised all sorts of things out there. We would say one apartment complex, one delivery, one time, just to the main gate and all. But we did feel we could see one handicap coming in out there, and that is a lesson for us. Aggregators who were basically going into the apartments were blocking us in some places, although the customers wanted to basically get to us. So we can see that India, I'm sure it is true for groceries and us and a bunch of other people who serve customers on a daily basis, that this kind of exclusive gated communities and walled off places and all are behaving now like different parts of the city with different rules and all. And to access them, there is someone out there who you have to, it's no longer just market. It is there is an elected government out there in the form of the association, and then there is a guy who is basically controlling their whole thing. And we found that a little bit of a challenge. Outside of that, and the fact that, people all went away to their homes and, it took us a while to bring them back and all. Luckily for us, it was business as usual. And unlike most people, given the fact that we were already online, we were already doing the click and pick and all, it is not a big thing. It is just that the service itself, while we had the technology on and the market was there, the delivery part was a big challenge for us. And but it did take a while to actually get back. But otherwise, we didn't face any of the usual problems.
So similar to that, I'm sure, Martin, you would also have had the same challenges. You had a ready-made model, which is the Star Quick model. So you had the opportunity to be able to, not just make sure that the Star Bazaar grocery section was kept open, but also you had a Star Quick model, which could help in terms of actually delivering. However, the Star Quick model was limited to a few cities and stores. So when you saw this change happening, where people were finding it difficult to come into your stores, and you also had a ready-made model available to help deliver to their homes, how did you think about integrating both of these and extending the Star Quick model in order to be able to create a more visible presence?
Yeah, you are correct. Obviously, we have Star Bazaar and our partners in Star Quick as well. So I think Ashwin has really summed up perfectly in terms of the demand. We had 48 hours to suddenly work from home, but as Ashwin said, that's only 5% of our workforce. So the biggest heroes are still in stores today and still serve the customer every single day, not a single day of closure, to be honest with you. But you are right, it wasn't just a question of the customers coming to our market stores, but also our customers wanting to be at home. So that adaptability or that kind of acute disruption had to bring innovation, and it was scale, it was capacity. We're not obviously as the scale as Ashwin is, but in terms of the demand was there for the scale and the capacity to improve. So we had to find a way in order to protect our colleagues and our customers, but also find a way to what was a disruption from our supply chain. How on earth we were going to get the fresh produce that everybody demanded, the staples in particular that everybody demanded. And that model connection between our partner StarQuick and Star Bazaar was the infrastructure of pick and pack in our Star Bazaar, but also the innovation of dark stores and also innovation of what we call a micro fulfillment center that we have here in Mumbai. So it was an element of speed, an element of agility. Perhaps our scale was able to get it there quicker than most, if I can be honest with you, in terms of market share, only want to grow in COVID times as well. So it was probably, in one essence, adaptability, back to acute disruption, but also what COVID brought all of us, and I would speak on everybody in the panel as well, in terms of that cross-functional learning, the ability to think about purpose. Ashwin spoke about how amazing our customers were. The purpose was extremely crystal clear, from your vision to your mission to your values. I think it heightened even more. It galvanized every single organization, but in particular food retailers, because we were serving the nation, this great nation of India. But what is important is that we were able to do it quickly. We were able to adapt on the acute disruption, but we were probably also, what COVID brought all of us was a massive magnifying glass on all our weaknesses. That type of disruption, which is inherent disruption, we had to fix also quickly. And what you can do with the acute disruption is you cannot ignore it, because it's today's customer telling you want to do something different and you need to serve them. But the inherent disruption that we had to go through and the transformation that we've seen in Star Bazaar and StarQuick over the last 18 months is fixing the basics of either the foundations, the culture, the agility of the business, and also the maturity and, I suppose, the adaptation. Food retailers adapt every single day. This was just a bigger version of it. But actually, between the inherent changes and the acute disruption, I think probably we've done ourselves proud, and certainly our colleagues were amazing as well, as Ashwin has already said.
Thanks, Martin. And one of the phrases you used were food retailers adapt. And I'd like to borrow that as a question for Ambrish. And purely from the perspective that, a lot of us actually spend a lot of time, including mulching through a hell of a lot of customer data to be able to define clearly what our customers want. And then we classify this as, we call it the product assortment, and that assortment then gets actually extended to different stores based on some historical pattern of demand. What I'd like to, first pose to Ambrish and then to each one of you is that what are some of the peculiarities that you found in the requirement of products on your site? Things that did not at all move and things that just flew off the shelf. And, literally in your furniture business, flying off the shelf means something more than just in the retail business. But what exactly did you get to see? And I'd like to pose to each, because obviously each one of us has experienced it. Products which are demanded by customers in quantities which are much beyond the expectations that we had.
So two things happened, Viju. I think actually 2 or 3 things happened. One of the things that, and I'm certain you guys would empathize with it, is the fact that work from home became a thing over the last couple of years. And so therefore, just the demand for work from home related products, be they study tables or the right kind of chair, all of that just went through the roof, right? So that category saw like a 7x growth in the span of the last couple of years, right? So that's one thing that happened. The second thing that happened, and this is, and I don't know whether it's actually panned out also in grocery and so on, but what we found was larger brands on our marketplace actually became larger. The mid brands started to fragment, and you found a lot more direct to consumer brands coming up and providing the assortment that consumers needed. So it was almost as if the market got polarized, right? So the larger brands became larger. There was a plethora of direct to consumer brands that came up, and the middle segment kind of shifted out. Now I don't know whether that happened in grocery too, but that was something that we witnessed in the marketplace, and courtesy of the data we crunch, we say, hey, this is an interesting phenomenon. Right? It's also a phenomenon we saw getting mirrored in the rise of Insta shops and other shops across social media, right? Where you have direct-to-consumer brands who are reaching out to consumers and getting their products out there, and they found niche groups of interest which they were ready to serve. And on a marketplace like us, we provided them the supply chain to be able to serve it with. Right, and so therefore that kind of just percolated, and it's almost like a trend that's stayed with us even as things have opened up post-COVID. So that's something. The third thing that happened, and this is actually was great news for us as a business overall. We spend a lot more time at home than we have ever done in the last 2 years. So consequently, just our consciousness towards that sofa, which was a little lumpy and you were putting up with it for, let's say, about a year without replacing it. Now that you were sitting on that sofa on a regular basis, you found that you were not willing to accept that lumpiness, and therefore you wanted the sofa replaced. And this happened with sofas, with lamps. So basically our consciousness as consumers towards things that are in our house went up manyfold. Now, some of that translated into immediate purchase. Some of that translated into purchases which got deferred after retail, etc., opened, right? But just the increased consciousness of consumers towards things that were happening in their homes was a fairly good phenomenon for at least my segment and my category, and that panned out quite well for us.
Sure. I'm taking that same question to Ashwin. And Ashwin, if you could just reflect on, 3 of your businesses. One, the grocery business. Second, the apparel business. And third, the electronics business. What were some of the quirks that you saw during this period?
What we experienced in groceries, the customers were really happy with whatever was available, because we had to really, as I said, that we have to find ways actually and make life easy for our associates who were brave. So how not to make it too difficult? So we had to taper it down in terms of restricting it to essentials. So with our understanding of the business and the customer, we really reduced the assortment, and it was not available also. See, it was the supply from the manufacturer itself was very disrupted and it was fragmented. So making the essentials available. So the brand consciousness completely disappeared in for a period of time actually. It was like item is item. It's a commodity, what it is there actually. So noodles means noodles. People are not conscious which noodles is, but if it is a noodles, it was there. So essentials became extremely, in groceries, essentials became really unitized in terms of combos, and in terms of like mix and match was there, that somebody wants only, sunflower oil, and somebody wants another, type of oil. But really the brand consciousness, as long as it was quality, so reducing the assortment helped us in doing a lot of scale of volume. And it also helped our associates, like, as I said, that making their life comfortable was very important actually. And also in store, creating an environment for the customers when we did that our store is safe with all the sanitizer, mask, shield, and PPE jackets, what we give to our associates. So they are safe and the customer feels safe. That all, when it was given, the customers who were coming to the stores, really they were picking what was necessary. The discretionary spend had really gone down for a period of time actually. And then we saw, so now this was groceries actually, that bare essentials of, least number of fruits, vegetables, and really the essentials of grains and processed food, whatever was available. that was picked up.
Ashwin, just one question also there in light of what Amrish mentioned. Did you also see some polarization of business between, say, store brands and national brands, and some, smaller brands actually got left on the wayside? Did you see something?
No. Actually, people picked up what was available actually, because even the national brands were not able to manufacture in the quantum which was required, because there was a huge pressure on really the modern trade stores like ours actually. The people who were operating, not all were operating. As it was said that people had gone to the villages. So the small retailers, many of them in the grocery segment, the kiranas, etc., a lot of people had gone back to their native places. And also the demand was huge and the supply was short actually. So whatever was available, and it was, we don't keep anyway, very, very low kind of quality, etc. But whatever we keep of the quality products as usual, there was a huge demand for everything, and we would have challenge of replenishing it to that extent actually, that so much was the demand both from an online channel and people who were coming in and shopping it for, a longer duration. They would shop a less number of SKU range, but stock it for a longer period is what we saw the phenomena. So the ticket size went up, but in a lesser range actually. So that is what we saw in terms of a surge of business in groceries, which really operated at almost whatever pre-COVID levels, and probably more in our case, because we had double the channel actually as far as groceries. In terms of the apparel piece of it, actually I'll come to electronics last because it is different and interesting. In terms of apparel, the government did not allow, in general merchandise also, the government didn't allow them to be sold for a period of time. So there was a sort of complete pause on that actually, in terms of both while ability to deliver as well as to get orders. But whenever the window was there, we saw that there was an element of revenge shopping, especially in the modern trade customers, as we are serving largely. So in that, the customers who were better off. They were getting salaries, they were doing everything. So they had that revenge shopping kind of a mindset and go shop kind of. So whenever the window of store opening happened and people could comfortably step out, we saw that there was a demand which was there. Of course, there was a shift in terms of what people were buying. So the homeware really saw a lot of the casual, and the homeware saw really a lot of demand. The really discretionary in that saw a beating, which was there. And as again, there have been pockets of festive period and open period and all. So whatever was there got picked up actually. So that is what, of course, it is not as much as business, because replenishment was also tapered down by everybody, including us, and the supplies from various places got disrupted. Like, for example, Tirupur was shut for a long period of time, China supply, all of that. There are lots of combinations in whose supply is what. There was a disruption. So, but demand was felt of whatever was available. When we came to electronics, the electronics was a very interesting situation. In the beginning itself, the home work from home items, so the computers and the mobile phones and the connectivity devices and all of that saw a very, very big surge, because people all wanted to equip themselves for working from home. So there was a huge demand, and again, short supply in that, consignments coming from different countries, etc., etc. So that saw a huge demand, but shortage of supply. Then, as was said by Amrish, that people sitting at home realized that, especially the men and the families who would spend less time at home, they realized that there are certain items which they would have not noticed in their normal, because they are not there at home for so long. So the refrigerator replacement is required, which otherwise took a back seat, or an AC was really working at substandard capacity, which was there. So all of these things also saw a different, need for one more mixer grinder, a need for another washing machine. So the pockets of demand in electronics was like really there in terms of a situation, but there the supply really had a problem actually, because the supply is imported in various kinds of things. We don't manufacture anything and everything in India as yet in that scale which is required. So the supply was constrained, but the demand we saw in terms of whatever was there. And whenever we could organize these big sale events, etc., we saw a very huge response from the customers in response to a price and an offering actually. So that's what was our story. And of course, we added Urban Ladder, and we added Zivame, and we added Netmeds to a scale. So for us, the story was quite growing in the entire period. And as I said, we must thank our associates who, with whatever heat, etc., they were wearing the PPE jackets for their own safety. We provided everything mask, but they kept on like 8 hours of wearing a PPE jacket for safety is not an easy thing, actually. So that was
true. Absolutely. And Madhukar, just switching to pharmacy. And if you look at pharmaceutical products, did you see any patterns there?
Yeah,
Stuff
of course.
that you didn't anticipate, you ran out of stock, and people were hollering at you and things like that.
Yeah, no. So whatever problems Ashwin and Ambarish said, ours were magnified significantly because there was always some fad cure coming up for COVID through WhatsApp every once in a while. So whether it was, let's say, the Ayurvedic kind of stuff, or whether it was just some vitamins and all on some YouTube channel out there being touted by someone as a good cure for COVID, everything basically just took a couple of days to spread and run out in our stores. And given the fact that supply chains were broken across, and there was a huge need for a lot of these, not just the pharmacy products, but also the small devices like inhaler, like basic stuff like digital thermometers, pulse oximeters, and all. Honestly, it was crazy. I've never seen anything like that. Typically, in a medical store, we just go out there, give a discount and MRP plus discount, and that's it. There's no price changes and all. For the first time, we started looking at products as to be pricing them almost on a daily, if not weekly basis kind of stuff. We sold pulse oximeters all the way from 4,000 all the way down to 600. Twice in between both, it was over first time when we basically bought a few 100,000 from China, and then we thought it was done. Then again, it was like back COVID. Once again, we went through the same thing and all. So at least the second time around, we were slightly better prepared. We knew how to do the pricing and everything else properly. But that is completely new to us. Where we were seeing, huge spikes in demand, stocks being not available at all, and people willing to pay any price for some of these products. So given where we are, I guess it is understandable a little bit and all that, but that is all behind us, hopefully, and it is business as usual. For us though, one thing, one positive I would say from the customer side of thing would be that people were so conscious of, being, let's say, of protecting themselves and all, that come June, every year, June and July after the monsoons, infection spreads across like crazy. There's all sorts of fevers and all. That was totally out. There's no COVID. Definitely, there was some COVID here and there, but the typical reasons for which people would shop with us completely went away. We saw a completely different type of demand out there, both for monitoring health and also for all sorts of nutraceuticals and everything else out there. Then of course, then the vaccine.
So another one which seems to have also appeared is that a lot of people were reluctant to go as outpatients. So they weren't going to hospitals, they weren't going and seeing doctors because they're afraid of actually contracting the disease. So did you see any subtle shift in patterns of actually what you might define as acute or prescription drugs versus your normal lifestyle related chronic drugs?
So Biju, actually there was not that much of a acute related drugs. So it was either COVID or nothing, because you were either getting COVID or you're not getting infected at all. You're not going out, you're covering and masking yourself very well, you're washing your hands thoroughly. I don't think the other viruses really stood much chance at that time, honestly. So for us, it was either this or that. So we sold an equal amount of paracetamol, equal amount of other things which we'd normally sell, but for different reasons altogether. The one big change though, I would say, and this I did not honestly expect. I thought it would be a few years in coming while we were online prepared for everything and all. The one thing we were still in the process was a telemedicine thing. And I was a little surprised at the way with which, people took to it across the country. We are seeing, of course, the fact that WhatsApp is so popular right now, video chatting and all, helped it a lot. People are now used to basically chatting on that. So I think that the one big thing for us was that telemedicine took off. And I think that is something which is going to stay. That will definitely form a part of all of our offerings going forward. And I'm sure it will be for a lot of the people. So I think now, when we get sick, most of us, would basically call a friend or family doctor or whatever, or maybe, if nothing else, just go to WebMD and see something out there and then figure out what to do. Now, I think you'll just basically go out there and call a doctor. Live doctor at 2 o'clock in the night also is available now. This has been I would say, a big change in the way we start basically looking after our health. I think this will be there. So we may still end up going to the GP or to the polyclinic and to the hospital. But I think even before you do all that, off hours, you will definitely now basically look at this telemedicine. I think that's going to be a big change for the overall healthcare system.
So Martin, just coming back to you in terms of, you've got StarQuick, which was your delivery model, and you've got Star Bazaar, which is the offline store. And when you think about it, it's, you started off being as distinct parts of the business, then you integrated one into the other. So when you think about it from a futuristic perspective and into the long term, and now you've also actually brought on an e-commerce veneer over the entire thing. How do you think of all of these businesses? Do you think of, let's say, the delivery model differently from the way you think of the online model, differently from the way you think of the offline model? How would you think of it when you look into the future?
Yeah, so you're now referring to the chronic disruption, where I talked about the magnifying lens on every business of what worked well and what obviously didn't work well. So strategically, you can be innovative because of COVID and obviously what it brought in terms of challenges, but obviously use it as an opportunity to kind of fix the bigger things. And that takes a lot of bravery for any leadership team. It takes a lot of bravery for any organization to go through that level of change. But you are right, in terms of the thinking forward and the consumer behavior, there has been an almighty shift. Now, through wave 1 COVID and Diwali unlock again of last year, and then wave 2 of COVID, which was obviously a lot harsher for the nation here. I think we had to learn very quickly. And one of the big blessings that we have in Star Bazaar and indeed StarQuick is we have that customer insights through our club card. In fact, we got to the dizzy heights of 97% of club card swipes for all our transactions during the last 18 months, which means you've got the granularity of what the customer wants live, also what we believe the future is, which is omni-channel, how we use the operating models between both and have synergies, how we brought better synergies towards our fresh, which became such an important thing. Back to what was said earlier on, in terms of health and wellness, fresh became such an important basket size for us, more than ever before, and it's remained that way. So we've had to learn back up the value chain, how we can connect both operating models, both online and offline, create value, and also then create value for our consumers in terms of price, in terms of value proposition, and also availability as well. And it also took a massive swing. So digitalization technology, for me, kind of thinking for the future, is combining the people, the process, and indeed the system. And then you have that as one ecosystem within a leadership culture, then obviously you have a purpose, you have clarity, from top to bottom, bottom back up to up, and that's where you have a sweet spot in change management, and that's where you have a sweet spot of thinking towards the future. Because if you didn't, and back to what you said earlier on about weather in the storm, you're going to come up very short. Never mind referring to maybe a wave 3 or whatever may be in front of us as well. What is clear is adaptability, change management, and that link between offline and online, and those quick examples of what I meant with supply chain, with Fresh Connect in terms of our digitalization, IoT on the farm right to the store. So the store manager has clarity, the farmer has clarity. I think those things were inherent things that we were challenged with, which is now a strength rather than perhaps a weakness. And that's a positive opportunity, what COVID gave us as a food retailer, because no matter what we do in our lives, we're here to serve our customer. And our colleagues, reiterating what Ashton has said, our colleagues in all retail, but in particular in Star Bazaar and StarQuick, have been phenomenal. But the change is now a reset. The change is what we call Star 2.0. it is being led by perhaps the environment, but also most importantly, the consumer behavior that changed overnight. And we've seen the insights change, and we've seen where we believe is going to be the stickiness of that one-stop shop, that stickiness of brand, and that stickiness to a food retailer like ourselves in Star Bazaar.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you very much. And I think, it's very strategic in terms of thinking to figure out clearly whether we adapt to what the customer is experiencing and what the customer is wanting. Do we drive that change ourselves? Do we let the customer drive the change and we follow? Or at the end of the day, in many cases, customers don't know anything better. We have to actually provide them as examples. And, Reliance, Ashwin, is one of those companies which actually has done a lot in this space. And one of the questions I'd like to ask you is that when you think about, let's say, the models, and when you think about, let's say, a unique exclusive online model like Ajio, think about the offline model and the online combined model, which is like a JioMart. One of the challenges that a lot of companies have is about how do I decide how much to invest, and how do I decide whether it's giving me adequate returns or not. And once you can illuminate on this question, I'd like to pose the same to Ambarish too.
So I think how much to invest in which channel, it is, I think, pretty clear in terms of there was a philosophy, as I said, in our scenario that because we were so strong in physical retail and our reach was, with 12,000 stores even before pandemic, and we added 1,500 stores while in pandemic. So our physical emphasis was so high because India is like that, and the moment you are able to serve the customer in their way, because people want to touch, feel, go, socialize. India is not an aging population. There is, everybody wants to step out. I mean, even now when we are seeing that it's just because the caution is there, but otherwise people want to step out. So physical was a way of, and we never felt any, issue in being heavy on physical. Yes, apparel was required because apparel, endless aisle and giving the choices to the customer and all of that was a very different subject. And while we had Trends, a different offering, and Ajio was a different offering, which we had segregated. But as far as, the point of investing, now when we are into this channel, which is the JioMart, I mean, there is no restriction on that. I mean, very fortunate that from the day one, it was a problem of plenty for JioMart. Actually, the day it launched, the number of orders which came in, even without our, just advertising. The website was on, and just Livewind carried one story that, in fact, the app was not even launched at that time. It just carried a story, Reliance launches JioMart, and we had, thousands and thousands of orders, and we were trying to figure out now what to do. Actually, the orders have come because you can't stop people from ordering, and then we had to figure out how to deliver from the stores, how to give software which is managing the entire thing and allocating inventory from here and picking, packing, shipping, how to do efficiently the bags which were to be required to be delivered. I mean, it was just, it was just kit chalu karte and let us start it in a manner that it is scaled. But we never got that even chance actually. From the third day, we had to, to fulfill the first day's orders itself, we had to scale up to a massive level actually. So really, I think the choice of, for other organizations, definitely budgets and restrictions are there. We are very fortunate in that sense that, even our partner delivery people, we have equipped them with masks and sanitizers and with PPE jackets and everything. And our associates also with the bikes and all, they were like, we all realized this, how much is there in the ecosystem. Initial period, people delivered with their own bikes actually, and whatever we arranged the vehicles for the people to come from home to because they were not allowed to travel, there was no public means of transport, so vehicles were arranged. People use those vehicles only to go and deliver and kind of do things. So resource constraint definitely comes when it is like, a profitability and resource thing. But when we are operating at scale, for us, all these became profitable also. It was a byproduct. The sales was a byproduct of sales was profitability. But as you know, Reliance, there's no restriction on capital. So whatever channel we are doing, I think our only philosophy is to be number one in that channel. So with that, I think mantra of our founder chairman and our Mukesh Ambani sir, I think there is that restriction is not there on our side. So we are able to pursue everything, and we should be investing. I think for other retailers, I would say that I think being in both the channels and omni-channel is a must. Otherwise, it is a question of survival. So everybody should judiciously invest, but they have to invest in both the channels actually. And for bigger people, I think they have to be like really perfect in their ecosystem.
Ambrish, since you've invested in both the channels, starting online first and then moving offline, how do you see this entire thing in terms of where's the payoff?
So one of the interesting things that happened, Viju, through the course of the last couple of years is the fact that, and you would notice this in even the spending trends of digital companies, is that one of the things that used to plague India used to be this entire thing of click-through rate right down to the purchase rate, right? So conversions from the top of the funnel to final transactions used to always be a problem in India, which is why, frankly, internet marketing ROIs never really kind of worked out. In the last 2 years, that's changed. And it changed very much in sync with the COVID thing. So it's because penetrations of online went up significantly, comfort of shoppers went up significantly. Therefore, the conversions from clicks to final orders went up substantially. Consequently, marketing spends, and this not only applies to Pepperfry, it applies to actually most internet native businesses, was marketing spends could actually be reduced substantially. And that's something that you would notice would have happened across businesses in the e-commerce as well as other digital spaces in the course of the last 2 years. What that did was it freed up capital. Now, we do not have endless capital, and therefore the choices were there to be made for us, right? I mean, we had to make them. And so therefore, when we freed up capital at the marketing level, we actually used that capital to invest in two things. One is I expanded my supply chain. I actually realized that the opportunities were many. And the opportunities would go much deeper beyond just tier 1 and 2 into 3 and 4 and 5 as consumption patterns shift in India. So one of the investment ready places we figured were tier 2 to 4 cities where we expanded our supply chain into. The second thing that we did was we thought it was a great opportunity for us to build great partner relationships. And I think, if there's one thing that stood out for me over the last year, it's that if your partnerships are really strong, then you kind of get past most problems that happen, right? And in this case, one of the things that happens with us is we work with a lot of MSMEs. We work with small manufacturers. We are not about the larger brands. We are actually about the small brands. We are about the small fish in a fairly large pond. And they went through the brunt of COVID. Their working capital cycles got affected. Their labor migrated back. All of those things happened. The protection of health, etc., amongst the MSME community and the people who work with them was something that we took on as a priority, right? So even this year, one of the things that I'm actually very happy that our team managed to do is we inoculated thousands of people in places like Rajasthan where we incidentally don't have 1,000 people working for Pepperfry, right? I have a team of 550 people and I'm very happy with it. But we work with thousands of people who owe their livelihoods to Pepperfry, right? And so in Rajasthan, we worked with them, with our merchants, to not only inoculate them, but also vaccinate their labor, their staff, their operators, and so on. And I think that's the roots to partnerships which will last, right? So that's another area that we decided to invest in. And all of this came from the fact that marketing became super efficient, right? Also, all of us would have gone through renegotiations on property rentals and all of the good stuff, which, was possible. And we used all of that money to plow it back into building great relationships. We put that money back into building out our supply chain, making it deeper. That's how we made our choices. I mean, I hope we made the right ones, and time will tell whether we got it right.
Thanks. Thank you. We're kind of coming to the end of our session because we've got another 3 minutes. We've got 2 audience questions, one of which is a deeply philosophical question. And Martin, may I request you to address this? Does growth always call for something as radical as reinvention? Also, can reinvention assure growth or success?
Okay, so the simplest answer is you don't need to always reinvent the wheel. Continuous improvement. So there is an importance when I refer to organizational culture and leadership culture through change, it is important to realize that there is a growth mindset needed. But a growth mindset doesn't mean to say you rip everything up and throw it out the window. I think I spoke about it earlier on quite well in terms of the acute disruption versus the chronic disruption. It's important to optimize and react to today. That's the innovation, that's the agility. But also then from a foundational point of view, from a culture point of view, from a maturity point of view, especially digital maturity, it's important to realize it's evolution and revolution. And you have to work out where's the best to invest. So in terms of Star Bazaar and change management, we've woken up 18 months later on with a operating model that is profitable, a omni-channel digitalization that we didn't have before, if I could be honest with you. And on top of that, we've got 2 customers that are satisfied. Our internal customer, because it's been built around their desires, as also their own challenges, as well as the external. That means partners as well as colleagues, as well as the external customer, our actual customers, which I also need to thank as well, just as much. So I would say it's ensuring that you have a leadership culture that is innovative, that shows agility, but also needs to be thinking at foundational level just as much as the challenges for today. We need to be thinking about the challenges for tomorrow and the challenges for tomorrow's tomorrow. However, that ain't easy. I think any of the panelists will tell you we're probably in long-term plan version 9. Since COVID hit. So the agility is also in thinking long term as well. So I would say there is a good sense of thinking of today and reacting well today, but it's not short term, it's long term. So evolution just as much as revolution.
Thank you. Madhukar, there is one more question, which is, everybody keeps speaking about the benefits of reinventing the business to make it digital first. However, for everything, there is a trade-off. What is the trade-off in this?
So, Biju, the answer to that is completely, related to the business in which you are in, right? Not every business needs to be digital. Not every business can afford not to be digital and all that. So, and for some, it is omni-channel. The way I see it, I'll kind of address it from the way I see it for our own business. Medical stores, we basically have customers walking up to the store, buying the product. We also have customers, calling on phone and having the product delivered. The way I see online is instead of now calling on phone and having it delivered, people are now going to the app and having the product delivered. As simple as that. It's easier for customers because they don't have to have a long conversation about medicines and this and that. They got around some of it by basically sending a WhatsApp of the prescription initially. And now they basically don't even do that. They basically go out there and see, because even if when you send a WhatsApp, you still don't know if the product is available at the store. On the other hand, when you basically go online and you click on it, you see the price, you see the discount, and then you ask for the product. So this is another way of, calling for the product. So someone like us cannot not afford to be there in that line at all, right? And on the other hand, if you were like a, travel agent and all, you got your business completely going up in smoke because of someone like a MakeMyTrip. But a lot of businesses, will fall somewhere in between. There are some omni-channel ones. I'm sure a lot of the furniture businesses will be omni-channel. A lot of our businesses will be 100% omni-channel. And there are several, garments too. When you go out there, great. You can basically buy a garment online, but you can also, avoid the benefit of going out there, figuring out the fit, feeling the fabric, making sure it's the right, thread count and everything else is also something which you can only get in a store, the touch and feel and all. So for me, the way I see it, it completely depends on the business in which you are in. And the way to look at it is, completely demystify it. I mean, what does digital actually mean? In a country in which there are several 100,000 programmers, setting up an app is not really great, not really that big of a job, even if you're a small business. There are hundreds of, tools out there to get your business online, like Shopify and all, which will do it for you. Even otherwise, for a small to medium to large, there's enough resources available. When we started the business in 2005 and 2006, we were already online. all our stores could see the inventory of all the other stores, and we could place, and all our stores could place an order from the warehouse. We waited till 2015 till the government basically changed the rules to turn that whole thing onto the customer side so that the customer could also start placing the order. So for me, it is just, one other way of reaching your customer. We waited till the time regulation made it happen. And we waited till the time there are enough customers with smartphones to basically actually use it. Otherwise, if in 2005 we were tom-tomming our online thing, I don't think anything much would have happened. And now in 2021, not doing it would be, completely harakiri.
Sure.
So there's a right time and right place for everything. And definitely all businesses, I don't think, need to see the same way. And if
Sure.
you have to go digital, you have to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I think, taking off from your answer, the last words in this, the essence of retail hasn't changed. The way you do retail will need to change depending on the category and depending on the situation. And we all know, as we discussed earlier, technology is going to be an enabler of our business. Technology can't be our business finally. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this panel discussion. Wonderful time that we had. Lots of great ideas. The thinking and the conversation was at a very strategic level. And I'm certain that it helped a lot of the people who are present on this panel discussion to also take away a lot from this. So thank you once again for being part of this and for contributing to the deliberations.